You probably have heard the saying according to which coming out is not a single event, but actually keeps happening throughout life. Well, as a transmasc person, meaning a trans person in the masculine side of the gender spectrum, I can confirm you it's true. I cannot tell you how many times during a meeting at work, with a shop assistant, or even with friends that actually know me, I still have to decide whether to correct them or not when they are seeing me. And you know which is one of the environments where we actually still have to come out the most? The healthcare system. And I don't know it simply because I have to navigate it as a trans person, but also because I make a living out of studying policies in healthcare, or at least I try. One of the issues that the whole LGBTI community has to face is what I will refer to as hegemonic hetero-cis normativity. I know it's a long word, but please bear with me. That is the assumption that the person in front of you is heterosexual and cisgender. So a GP would see a female patient and assume that they have a husband, or they would presume that if the patient has a beard, they do not have a cervix. However, this assumption rules out all those people that have body parts that actually you will not expect by their outlooks. Hegemonic heterosis normativity is one of the many reasons why still today 46% of the LGBTI community in Europe, so half of us, still do not feel confident enough in being open as queer with their healthcare providers. And this is basically because healthcare providers are not trained to deal with bodies that do not conform with the binary concept of gender or with heterosexuality. You might be wondering then, how is it that we make sure to find friendly healthcare providers? Well, the answer is pretty simple, by words of mouth. In some cities, you will have friends telling you names of queer-friendly healthcare providers you can refer to. But in other cities, actually, like the trans community is very much well organized. You will find Google Docs with long lists of names of friendly healthcare providers that you can refer to. However, these providers are few, whereas the queer people, despite what cisgender heterosexual people might think, are many. The issue then is that the waiting lists are extremely long, or these healthcare providers actually do not have simply any space left to actually take up new patients. So this is because, as mentioned, they are not trained to deal with us. Once I tried to take an appointment with a GP that was on one of these lists that I found. Of course, she was completely booked. So naive me, I decided to take an appointment with healthcare providers that were working with her in the same exact clinic. I was expecting that as they were working together, she would have some knowledge. Well, that was wrong. She was completely useless for my need, and she really simply did not know how to help me. This is just a simple example of why we still struggle to trust healthcare providers. If you think about it, this mistrust has historical roots. Just think about how queer people have been pathologized throughout history, identified as people with psychiatric condition because of our sexuality, our identity, and our sex characteristics. This mistrust is still palpable and still has practical consequences. The fear of discrimination, the fear of being subject to any form of minority stress, the fear of not being understood by the healthcare system still has practical consequences. I personally know people who have got a diagnosis of cancer at a later stage than what they could have got, simply because they kept postponing the moment they will face the healthcare system out of fear. Imagine a life-saving diagnosis delayed because they didn't feel confident enough to actually face the healthcare system. And this is because we still live in a society that marginalizes specific communities and still has a long way to go to actually reach equity. Heterosis normativity has an influence also on healthcare policies. Let's take the example of prevention policies. Today in Europe, we still have prevention policies for cervix illnesses only for women. And I know what you're thinking. Well, obviously. But that actually rules out all those people like transgender men who need these preventive plans. The thing is, when you change your gender on your ID, your body parts becomes invisible and you risk to actually lose healthcare coverage for your needs and even just checkups, because the healthcare system is still heavily genderized. So marginalized communities, like the LGBTI communities, create strategies to actually cope with the flaws of a system and a society that does not have space for us. We create active network of cares to support each other. All of it while taking up the unpaid and emotional labor of educating those that are not part of the community, even when they are the experts and we should be the one to be taken care of. All of it while also being always there to support physically and mentally the members of our community, because they rarely have somewhere else to go. So as we've seen, the healthcare system can still be a source of distress for the LGBTI community, because discrimination is still present, healthcare providers are not trained, and policies do not account for us. A first solution for this issue is to, actually train healthcare providers. And that would not only make them feel more confident when dealing with us, but also will make us feel more safe. Another important point is that healthcare facilities and healthcare providers actually should make it obvious that their environment is a friendly one. This can pass through the use of inclusive language, for example, but not only in visits face-to-face, but also in the bureaucracy. For example, in those forms that we have to fill in when you have to fill female, male, and if you are non-binary and lucky, unknown. Another important point, though, is that we need to quantify this issue and to frame how it actually impacts our life. And for that, we need to create and develop research and put an attention on this topic that has largely been overlooked in Europe. Finally, and maybe most importantly, we need that policymakers create inclusive actual policies. They need to include us in the development of laws and policies that are aimed at us, because in 2023, there are no more excuses for excluding marginalized communities from the discourse when developing policies that are aimed at us. So reach out to us, ask what our needs are, ask what our issues are, and also reach out to those people that are not as privileged as to have a platform like TEDx to actually be speaking. Those people that still live in squats, still live on the street, and are subject to more than one form of discrimination. At the end of the day, it's really up to the society to actually include us. Make it obvious that your aim is to help us. Otherwise, used as we are to always feel unsafe, we will still be struggling, even in places like the healthcare system, where we should actually be taken care of. Thank you.